The Revolution Podcast, episode number 35, Children of Men.
Hi, you're listening to Revolution Podcast. This is Maria Howell as Grace on Revolution.
Golden Spiral Media presents The Revolution Podcast. Support for The Revolution Podcast is provided by listeners like you and our affiliation with HostGator. Not only does HostGator host over 8 million domains and provide powerful, reliable hosting, HostGator is environmentally friendly. Learn more about HostGator and their renewable energy credits by visiting goldenspiralmedia.com/HostGator today. Welcome back to the Revolution Podcast, everybody.
I'm Jeremy.
And I'm Daryl. Good to be with you guys today. Good to be with you, Jeremy.
Good to be with you, Daryl.
You know, I only get to see you one day a week now because we don't work together anymore. How have you been?
I've been well. I've recovered from my illness.
Yes. So. Well, I'm glad. You sounded, man, listening to that feedback podcast last week, you sounded miserable. And I'm glad you trudged through because you were a trooper.
Sorry about that, guys.
Yeah, well.
I sound awful.
Yeah. I mean, your normal voice is terrible. But
that's true.
Jeremy on Snot is, you know.
This is Jeremy.
Like me.
This is Jeremy on Snot.
Well, we're glad that you guys have joined us this week as we talk about the penultimate episode of Season 1 of Revolution entitled Children of Men, written by David Rambo and Jim Barnes and directed by Frederick E.O. Toya. And I always think I say that wrong. Maybe one of these days I'll get to talk to the man and ask him if I've been saying it right or wrong all these years. But
we could hope.
That would be cool, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would like that. But anyway, what do you say we get into just the tiny little bit of news that we have for this week?
Okay.
Literally just a tiny little bit of news this week. I mean, look, like I said, this is the penultimate episode, which means next week is the ultimate episode, the final episode of the season finale. And so there's not a whole lot out there. They're on break right now for the summer. You know, there'll probably be some more news when we get closer to Comic-Con, San Diego Comic-Con, and maybe even Dragon Con and some of the other things that they'll do this summer. But for right now, there's not a whole lot of news. We can tell you that the season finale is next week. And it's still titled The Dark Tower.
It hasn't changed titles.
It has not changed titles.
Well, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Well, since we don't have any extra footnotes this week, at least I couldn't find any, I was on their website. I did watch the time-lapse video for the chalk art. Have you seen that yet?
No.
It's pretty cool. This guy's, I guess, kind of freehanding.
Oh, yes. That was at Anaheim's Comic-Con, maybe?
I'm not sure. I don't get to go to all the Comic-Cons.
Well, I didn't get to go to that one.
So, but it was really fun watching, and he did a great job.
I didn't know there was a time lapse of it. I saw the finished product and thought it was really good.
Yeah. So
where did you see that? Can you give the website for that?
It's just NBC and then Revolution.
Oh, it's on the NBC site.
Yeah.
Okay, I misunderstood you.
And it's just in their video section.
Very cool. We'll go check that out. There's some news for you this week. Yeah. We mentioned that the season finale is next week, and it looks to be awesome, amazing. So many superlatives could be thrown out at it.
Superlatives. You're on your game with words tonight.
Am I?
Yes.
Well,
penultimate and superlative.
That's all I got. That's all I have for you folks. It's going to be Dumb Daryl for the rest of the podcast. So that's all I have. Well, you know, I'll just say before we get into the episode recap or anything else, I'll go ahead and say last week I gave it a 4. I didn't like the episode. It was kind of the same stuff we'd seen over and over again. I did not feel that way about this episode. We'll talk more about that after the episode recap. The episode begins in Monroe's tent. Rachel pulls the pin on the grenade, and she is tackled by a guard. He quickly wrestles the grenade out of Rachel's hands and throws it outside. No one on the inside of the tent is harmed. Team Miles lands the helicopter about 4 miles from the tower. They grab several guns and make their way to the tower, prepared for war. Rachel is taken to the control panel at the tower door and forced to put her palm up to the scanner. Much to her and Randall's surprise, it grants her access and the doors open. With a team of around 8 soldiers, Monroe, Rachel, and Randall enter the tower. The group we saw watching the monitors last week sees Monroe's team enter the tower and prepares to go meet them, grabbing several high-powered weapons as they go. Randall leads the team to a monitoring station, and we learn that worldwide satellites are still up and can view any location on Earth. We see images of Venice, Italy, London, England, Tokyo, Japan, and Paris, France. They can kill anyone on Earth with the push of a button, if they can make it down to level 12. They get into the elevator and head down, but it stops at level 11. They get off the elevator and are met with heavy gunfire from the tower group. Monroe and Rachel escape to a bunker, and Randall escapes to an unknown location. Outside, Team Miles meets up with Aaron. Using the override code in Dr. Warren's journal, they open the door to the tower. However, due to gunfire from Monroe's camp, Tom and Jason are unable to make it to the tower and are locked outside. They are captured and tied up. Tom plays mind games with the captain to convince him that it's only a matter of time before Monroe kills him, just like he has killed every other person in that position. Tom convinces him to let them go so they can kill Monroe, and Tom will take over as the new leader. Back inside the bunker, Monroe tells Rachel that he knows that he has a lot of blood on his hands, including Danny's, but it's not what he intended to happen. They can see on video monitors that Charlie and Miles have made their way to level 11 and are in danger. Monroe convinces Rachel that if she will help him get weapons and escape, then he will do all he can to save Charlie's life. They rescue Charlie and Aaron, and Monroe goes after Miles. Rachel, Charlie, and Aaron are captured by the tower people and taken to their leader. Rachel recognizes the man as Dan. She worked with him on the tower project but thought he was dead. It turns out that he and several other members of the tower team were working at the tower the night the power went out and have been there ever since. The group is made up of the workers' families and grandchildren. They rescued Grace and she is part of their group, but they have no desire to go to level 12. In fact, they insist that it is far too dangerous and burn Dr. Warren's journal. Grace tells Rachel to tell them what will really happen if they flip the switch. She says it could turn the power back on and save the world, or it could set the world on fire. All right, time for some episode discussion. All right, Jeremy, what did you rate this week's episode?
Well, I gave it 9 out of 10 excessively effective grenades, even though they weren't really grenades. From the railgun.
Oh! I thought you were that we did see 2 grenade explosions. One was effective and one was not. So I thought you were either being sarcastic about the one or not sarcastic about the other. It turns out you went with option C, which was not truly a grenade.
Exactly. When I gave it the note, I thought it was a grenade, and then I caught on later that look, it's apparently not a grenade launcher. It's just a prop.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, that's a terrible rating.
It's better than a 4.
Yeah, well, I give it 9.5 blood-spattered walls. We saw a few of those. Yeah.
I think they were getting all of their gore in before their Wednesday night move.
I think they got their gore and their language in, because I don't think that the D word that we've heard before, it's not a word that I use, but we've heard it before in the show, and but never as much in one episode as we got last night that I can recall.
Well, I can't either, and I actually had friends over last night. They just wanted to come spend some time with us. They've not actually seen this show since like the first 3 episodes.
Okay.
And he was kind of shocked at the language and the violence, and I'm like, it's normally not like that.
Yeah, that was as bloody and as the language was as bad as we've seen it yet.
Yeah, but like I said, they're probably just getting it out before Wednesday.
Well, the language I don't know, but the gore, I think there's a reason for it. We'll talk about that. I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves talking about what we got in this episode, and cause that's something I have in the very end of the notes to kind of wrap up our conversation. But
I'm going to read ahead.
That's all right. You can read ahead. I don't care. This was interesting, Jeremy. We talked last episode about during last week's review podcast that all of the teams were kind of meeting together, and we try to take our episode discussions and kind of break them apart by, you have Team Miles. Usually we've had Rachel and Aaron, and then we've had Monroe. This week, we kind of got all those resituated. We have Aaron, and Aaron is now with Team Miles. We have Team Tom, who's just Tom and Jason as of right now. And then we have Monroe and Rachel. But even then, at the end of the episode, that's fragmented off. Now you have Miles and Monroe. You have Rachel in the tower. It's going in so many different directions. But for the sake of discussion for this show, this is what we're going to do. We're going to kind of keep it on Team Miles, and then we combined Team Monroe and Team Rachel into one story arc. And so that's how we're going to kind of approach it this week. So we'll see how well that goes. There's so much crossover, though. This thing could go anywhere today.
Expect it to go anywhere.
Yes. So
especially into the future.
May the Force be with us all. Right. All right, speaking of Star Wars, that was the worst segue ever. I got a big Star Wars vibe in this episode. Did you?
Definitely I did, but the thing that stuck in my head was Tolkien.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
More Lord of the Rings stuff?
More Lord of the Rings stuff, but probably not in as much of, I guess, a purposeful symbolism from the creators.
What was it that made you think of Tolkien?
Well, I think the same thing at the beginning that made you think of Star Wars, the door.
Okay. That is the part that made me think of Star Wars.
Yeah, well, I have the way is shut.
Uh-huh.
And I think the quote is something like, it was made by those who are dead, and the dead keep it. Until the time comes, the way is shut. So to me, that kind of, they expected the people to be inside, or the people inside to be dead.
Right.
They were the creators of it. They keep it, and we didn't really know they were completely alive until now.
Yeah.
So,
hey, you know what? I'll give it up to you. I can totally see where you would get that after hearing you describe it in that way. For me, it reminded me of Star Wars, the Return of the Jedi, The Empire Strikes Back, when they're on Hoth.
Right.
And, Luke is stranded out there, and Han goes after him, and they eventually shut those doors. And this isn't at the scene where Charlie is looking out towards Jason. They're looking longingly at each other, and the doors shut. All we needed was Chewbacca there to kind of moan when the doors shut, because there's no getting in or out. Really, Tom needed to go find the Tauntaun, slice it open, and they needed to hide out there. Then they wouldn't have been captured by Monroe's men.
Yeah, I'm not so sure about that theory, but yeah.
So that was the vibe that I got.
Right.
But you know what? Both of them are valid. We've heard the showrunners, the producers, talk about that Star Wars and the Lord of the Rings both have played into their thought processes and inspiration when going into this show. So I think we're both valid.
Sure.
How's that?
Hey, that works for me.
All right. So the other thing I'll mention about that scene where Aaron is opening the door, there was a lot of numbers, and if I know I'm not alone. We got a tweet from Zort70. Yogabon said that she did the same thing. Anybody who's a Lost fan in particular doesn't look at numbers on a TV screen anymore without saying, what could those possibly mean? And then trying to make them into something. They were 2 digits. They weren't always digits. Sometimes they were an alphanumeric combination that we saw when Aaron was typing in the override code to get into the door. But those were a valid hex. I don't know the right terminology. Valid hex symbols, is that the right word? But anyway, you can decode it and it means something. There's one typo in it, but otherwise
it's an F instead of an I.
That's right. Here's what it says: "Ignite the world and watch it burn." It starts with an F. That first 2-digit combination there. I think it was a 46. Had it been a 49, I think it would have been an I. So I don't know if that was just mistranscribed, but it looks like if you took it into hex, it says "Ignite the world and watch it burn." That is super cool. That's a great Easter egg, isn't it?
Yeah, and it makes me wonder what's going to happen if they turn the power on.
Doesn't it?
More than I did last night.
I know. Once I saw that, I'm like, oh my goodness. Because I'm of the opinion that turn the lights back on. It's a 1 in a billion chance. But then when you read that, you're like, oh goodness. Yeah. Maybe they shouldn't turn the lights back on.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that's a really cool Easter egg. So, Fignite for the win.
Huzzah. That's the new word, Fignite.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so The other thing I wanted to talk about here, and this is kind of some bleed over, like I said, but Tom is starting a coup. This is no surprise, right?
Yeah, we've talked about this a while ago. I mean, I can't really remember the last time
It's been a while. I don't know when either.
Yeah, we actively discussed it, but it's one of our first thoughts as to what would happen to the Monroe militia, and Tom taking over is something we had thought might occur. I thought it was awesome that Jason actually supported him. Maybe I'm jumping.
Did you think that was awesome, or did you think that was a little out of character?
I thought it was awesome. It may have been a little out of character, but at the same time, I think Jason understood the grave situation he was in. And hey, even if I don't support my dad, I'm going to say hey.
Well, that's a good point, because his only way out was with his dad in that moment, right? Is either they die together or escape together.
Right. And the fact that Jason seems to have had his senses about him enough to do that.
Yeah. And I don't disagree with what Jason said, and that was that Tom always took care of his men.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that we've seen anything to dispute that.
Right.
Now, he's treated other people that opposed him with no mercy.
Right.
Which Monroe has also done, but he's also treated his men like nothing. They're nothing to him. His paranoia has obviously gotten the best of him there. So maybe Jason's right there, but I don't. And I'm not saying that Jason is all out on board with Tom. I'm just saying I don't see any reason to believe that he would be, really.
Yeah.
He might be with him now because, like I said, it was either die together or escape together, but I still don't think that this means that Jason is on Tom's side. If it does, what the crap? What was all that stuff we've gotten over the last several weeks?
I hate you.
Yeah, so I'm hoping that he's just not all of a sudden magically on his side.
Yeah. Well, I don't think he necessarily will be, but one thing that does prove that Tom loves his troops is because we see early on in the series when the guy dies and he pretty much gives him his rights, he's holding on to him, kind of talking to him as he dies, and then he gives him, I can't remember, does he give him some...
He gives him some poison to make him die.
But,
yeah.
And I know at the time when I watched that, it kind of made me think, well, he doesn't care. But now, kind of seeing what you said here, it goes, well, he was there for him.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm glad you remembered that reference. Did you have a time travel reference and I talked over it? I want to hear what this was. I didn't mean to talk over your time travel
I just
reference.
said to the future.
The last thing I want to do is talk over you and your talking. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, you said something about Star Wars earlier when you got into that, and I was like, to the future. Like, we're off. That was my time travel.
That was your time travel reference?
It's just a bit of a reference.
That doesn't count,
I was hoping it would segue into the time travel discussion, but...
I see. Well, let's do it now. You have time travel discussion you want to throw out?
Well, it's going to take us right inside of the...
inside the tower?
The tower.
All right. That's a good segue anyway.
Well, okay. I'm just going to say it's a collider.
Which we predicted.
Right.
Based on the pictures that we saw.
And they could possibly be used to create some sort of tear in time.
What are you basing that on?
What is all sci-fi based on?
Fiction.
Exactly. Hey.
Okay. Because what you have in your notes here, let me find it. Where did you put that?
Super colliders can be used for...
Yeah. Super colliders can be used for time travel. And my response when I saw that, I'm like, really? Where's that happening? I don't see any time travel going on. Maybe, like nanoseconds of time travel, but not like anything substantial.
Time travel's time travel, man.
Not exactly. No, it's not.
From what I understood as a young lad, and this has been several years, I always thought that they were trying to clash the super collider, like the particles, in order to create some form of tear into an alternate dimension. And maybe not really what they're doing, but some people kind of theorized it could do that.
I've heard that theory, yeah.
And as we all know from Fringe, alternate dimensions are really time travel. So you have more than 3 or 2 universes. You have 3 universes.
Unless you have a pocket universe.
Right, which doesn't really exist. So,
unless it's a Hot Pocket universe.
Hot Pocket. But no, so, if you tear a hole into a different universe, you can technically time travel. Sort of, maybe, kind of.
You're stretching it, man. You're stretching it. You can't just say, well, if it's a collider, then that brings in time travel.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying.
Well, I'm just saying that it could be used for time travel. So
they're thinking that we should have a new segment, the time travel segment. You know, we could throw in the time travel theory of the week. I would support that.
I try to throw it into the episode at random points.
So you wouldn't want like with intro music, dun, 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 and now it's time for Jeremy's time travel theory of the week. You know, something like. Would you like that?
I don't know. If Jim is on that, I'll do it for sure.
Oh, you and Jim.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, I just want to let you know the cell phone was fiction when Star Trek invented the tricorder.
That's true.
So, just saying.
And I'm not disputing that time travel might come into the show, although I am disputing.
Yes, you are.
What I'm saying is that the current particle colliders are not being used for time travel.
Mm-hmm.
You have it in the notes as if it's, they're just using that to create they get them up to 88 miles an hour and collide them together, and all of a sudden, they're back in 1954.
55?
55, whatever.
Okay. Hey, I'm just saying.
All right.
So we can go back in time now to the totally ineffective grenade that
yes, let's go
I
back
went
to
into the
that.
future last week to see it was going to be ineffective, so we're going back in time now to discuss how ineffective that really was.
We were not surprised that Rachel did not die and Monroe didn't die. We predicted that last week.
Yes.
I don't know that anybody really thought that either of them were going to die by that.
Mm-hmm.
But I was surprised that not a scratch on him.
Yeah.
It was completely ineffective, just as you said.
Yeah.
Although I will say, I was not surprised that Rachel didn't have a scratch on her. And here's why. I don't know if you follow the official NBC Facebook page.
Nope.
They posted a spoiler picture
And that's why
on Friday or Saturday. And it had Rachel just fine, not a scratch on her, with Charlie and Aaron inside this building. Okay, well, Charlie and Rachel and Aaron haven't been together.
Right.
Like, it couldn't have happened from the past. And they haven't been anything like that since they got to Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm.
This was clearly something from the upcoming episode. Clearly showed Rachel not hurt and with Charlie.
Nice.
And they got blasted for it. And people were like, well, come on, who really thought she was going to get hurt? Or die. I didn't think she was going to die, but don't go posting a spoiler picture that negates your cliffhanger.
Yeah.
I was so upset. A lot of people were upset, so...
Fair enough.
Anyway, so I wasn't surprised by that point that she had not a scratch on her. I didn't know what Monroe's fate would be.
I have a
then.
spoiler next week.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, John Doe kills Monroe.
John Doe kills Monroe.
Yep.
So you're still going out there that Monroe's going to die next week?
It's not going to die, yes, but he's not going to die because of the current standoff that they're in.
Okay. So you say John Doe. So are you saying that someone that we don't even know yet is going to kill him?
No, I'm just saying I don't know who's going to kill him, but he's still going to die.
Because that would be completely dissatisfying if he dies, but it's from some new character that we meet next week. It's got to be from Rachel or Miles or Charlie.
Yeah.
Or Tom.
Or Jason.
Maybe.
Or Aaron.
Yeah, maybe.
Or Ben.
Ben rises up from the grave. No, Ben comes back from the past. Here's our time travel reference.
Yeah, there you go. Somebody used the collider to go get him.
Oh, Jeremy, I don't know about you, man. You're leading me down paths I can't follow you.
Yeah. Just, never mind.
All right. So, we both thought they would survive. They did. I was a little disappointed that there wasn't any, like the big cliffhanger, and there was nothing out of it. It was just within the first 20 seconds of the episode, it's a moot point, basically.
Well, yeah. We all knew that.
I just wish somebody would have at least gotten a piece of shrapnel embedded into their thigh or something.
Okay.
So
I'm good with that. Or like the guy jumping on her would have...
Or a guy jumping on it to absorb the blows, not just getting it thrown out. And I know a couple of red shirts were out there and it looked like they got killed. Great. But, it was a bit weak for me.
Yeah.
But I don't want to harp too much on that because I loved the episode. And if that was probably the weakest part of the episode for me was the fizzle after the big cliffhanger we got last week.
Right.
All right. So they make it inside. Well, actually, they get to the computer.
Right.
Palm.
Mm-hmm.
I love that scene. Rachel and Randall are both looking at each other dumbfounded that she has somehow miraculously granted them entrance into the tower.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting. I don't know. He was a little ticked off. But
Randall.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I don't have a whole lot to say about that. She did a good job in the whole episode, but I'm having a feeling that her face here is only the start of how much you loved her in this episode.
Yeah, I did. So they go inside. They get to this monitoring station where we see Tokyo, London, Paris, and I'm forgetting one other.
I was looking at the chat room after that happened because I wanted to see people's reactions.
Yeah. Well, I went back and looked at those, paused on each of those cities. Right. They're completely overgrown. Mm-hmm. They are without power as well. I think that's confirmed. We were 99% sure, but we haven't seen it, so who knows?
Right.
Well, now we know. They were definitely overgrown with greenery, which is our clue that they are without power as well.
Mm-hmm.
But he said that if he can get down to level 12, all with the push of a button, they can kill anybody.
I thought that was fascinating. I wonder if they have a satellite or something.
That's what my question was. They would have to be using a satellite. No missile goes from Colorado Springs to Tokyo, does it? Or to Paris? I don't know. Maybe it does, but I'm thinking some sort of satellite, something rather.
Yeah, I was thinking kind of like an ion cannon or something.
Yeah.
And it would essentially...
Now, he said that they could kill anybody. Do you think that literally means they could use their satellite to hone in on a guy who's eating lunch next to the Eiffel Tower and fry that guy? Do you think they can activate nanites that's just on that guy? Like they could use some sort of, I don't know, they could focus in on a person and just fry that person?
I don't know.
Like Dr. Warren did those two militiamen?
I was thinking more or less that they were thinking, well, you might get him and the other 15,000 people.
That's my question. Is it precise to the person or, precise to a, like you said, a radius of a few miles or, tens of miles or something?
I have no idea how.
I know you don't know. I'm asking you to make a prediction.
My prediction? You need me to make predictions for you. I would say that it's probably at least confined to, like, I don't know, a block or two. I couldn't say. I'm not going to say it's a couple miles, but I'm going to say it does have a radius.
I will say it is. They could get it down to like a 6-foot radius.
Okay.
That was my first thought when he said it, and so I could be dead wrong. It seems more far-fetched to be that way as opposed to just, big, cloud of or circumference of impact. But I'll go with the small radius of impact.
All right.
6 feet or so.
I'm looking forward to seeing this thing activated personally.
Yeah. Well, that'll be the question, won't it? Is because he said he has to get down to level 12 before he can make that happen, and obviously the tower people are not letting anybody down to level 12.
Right.
But Randall, where is he?
I don't know. I don't think he's dead.
No, I don't think so either.
Because if he died, I'm sure we would have seen him.
Yes. He got sprayed with blood, but then he kind of ducked and weaseled away, and that was the last we saw of him.
Yeah.
He's out there, he's alive. And he may be wounded, but I don't think so. I think if you were hit by that thing, you were dead.
Yeah, and I think he's going to be excessively important next week.
Do you think he'll die next week?
Well, I think he might. But I think he'll have a starring role.
Yeah. Well, yeah, he'll. I think he'll probably be the big bad next week, and he very likely could die next week. I'm going to say Monroe does not die next week.
All right.
I know you said that earlier that you.
I have to go with it until it doesn't happen.
Well, sure. Like I told you, when you first started, when you throw a theory out there, you stick with it until proven otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, Monroe dying by the end of the season seemed like a far-fetched idea. He was our big bad at the time. And I love him. I love Monroe. Not as I don't like him. I love that character, I should say, and I love what David Lyons is doing with them. So I hope that he doesn't die. I want him to be a part of the show for a long period of time.
I don't want him to be redeemed. I'm always for the redeemable character.
I'm not saying I want him redeemed.
Right.
No, I'm not saying that at all.
So you want him to actually gain some form of power here.
I just want him on the show.
Okay.
I just love what David's doing with that character, and I loved what he and Elizabeth Mitchell did this week. You know, that when they were in that bunker together, man, look, we know Elizabeth Mitchell is a fine actress. She's done some great things on this show and outside of this show. A lot of us are learning David for the first time through this show, and he's had some great scenes in this show so far. But when they were in that bunker together, they were both just standing toe-to-toe with their acting chops and just doing it, man. They were owning the screen, and I just thought it was wonderful.
Yeah.
And I look at that and I go, man, I want more David. He's great, you know. Go ahead.
I don't disagree with that. I just Monroe as a person needs to die.
I hear you.
So,
and I have said that too, but gosh, we're so off the outline here, which it doesn't matter. But when he's in there with that scene with Rachel, and he, you know, she says, "You always make excuses. I'm not letting you make an excuse for this. You are guilty of Danny's death, whether you were there or not." And he basically looks at her and says, "You're right. I have a lot of blood on my hands. Is this a turning point in Monroe, or was it? I won't even say it's a moment of weakness, because I do think that he does believe that in his heart of hearts. But is this going to be a turning point for him? Is he going to fundamentally change because he's had this admission of guilt?"
Man, I don't want him to. That's all I can think of. Is I do not want him to change.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some theories like he could change and Rachel will end up killing his son to get back at him and things like that. But man, I want him to be gone.
Yeah.
I love David Lyons. He's been doing a great job in this show, but I don't know. It's just,
well,
he just needs to go.
I'll say it is not a turning point for him. He does know the guilt that he has upon him. But I think that it's just who he is at this point. I don't think there's any I don't think there is any redemption for him. Look, he and Miles are staring each other down with these weapons that could annihilate either one of them. I don't know that Miles is going to kill him. I said that he's not going to die, but I don't think there's redemption for him. I don't know when he will die. Tom obviously has got, the target on him as well. So no, I don't think he's he has not changed his spots. Let's put it that way.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, when they were in that bunker, one of the things, kind of speaking of him changing, they were doing such a good job focusing on that story.
Yeah.
I did start to question whether or not Miles was Charlie's father.
You know what? It's interesting that you say that. I didn't get that vibe at all, but we have two different feedbackers that called in with that. That Bass might be Charlie's father.
He seemed to know Rachel a little more than I thought he did, but granted, he did have her captured for 7 years.
That's true, and if she had a thing with Miles before, she would have had to have. If Charlie is Miles' daughter, then if Miles and Monroe were hanging out together all the time, they could have been friends. Right. And based on what we saw with the Monroe flashback, where he was cheating on Miles' girlfriend, right? You never know, man. It could have been the same thing. Yeah, it could have been, just sharing Miles' girlfriends behind his back, and he didn't know it.
He's like, Matheson has a girlfriend, I'm just going to take it.
Yeah. Now, I also heard some chatter about, I think it was on Facebook, about Danny being Monroe's son, the son that we'd heard about, but that can't be true, because was it Annie was the character name or the actress name? But either way, Rachel birthed Danny, so Danny can't be the son that the other girl was talking about.
Right.
In my mind, I mean, that would be. I mean, you got to go down a windy path to make that make sense, and I don't think so. I'm gonna throw Occam's razor at that and say no.
Okay. Yeah. I'm gonna say no on that too.
Okay.
But I don't know, man.
But you're saying that perhaps Bass is Charlie's father.
Yeah. That's like a minor thought in my head, but when I said it, it sounded kind of cool.
All right. Well, we really are going to have to get Jerry Springer out here for this if that turns out to be the case.
Yeah.
Especially if Miles thinks that he is her father. Oh, man. Okay, where are we at on these notes, man? Well, that kind of gets us into the next thing, I guess, where in the flashback we learn that Ben and Rachel not so happily married.
Yeah.
This is not a surprise. We even speculated again way back when she found out that Ben died. We looked at that and went, gosh, she didn't really seem that all impacted by him dying. What she was impacted by was Danny had been captured.
Right.
Well, I think we got our gut instinct there was verified here in this episode.
Yeah, I mean, she lived several years with him during the blackout and apparently didn't like any of it.
Yeah, the kids were the only thing probably keeping them together.
And they felt responsible for it, so maybe they felt they needed to fix it together. But I thought it was interesting that, I mean, even before the blackout, they were so angry at each other. And that kind of leads to maybe some, I guess, promiscuity at some other point in their past.
Oh, I'm sure, and probably with Miles. Do you think that when she left the children and Ben behind, that she had this grand idea that she was going to reunite with Miles and their flame would rekindle immediately?
She might have had that, but it definitely didn't happen from what we know.
No, right away. You know, I said when we saw that flashback, 2 weeks ago, that when he looked at her and said that whatever they had between them was over, and she said, I have regretted that every day, or whatever she said in reply, that I didn't believe it, that she was lying and doing a terrible job of it. I think that is true. Yeah. I think that she did have hopes that she was so tired of Ben. I think she had hopes that Miles would
take her in
and there would be something there that she longed for, but not the case. But maybe not. I mean, she did call him the Butcher of Baltimore and stuff, so I could be wrong, but that's just kind of my hunch on that. Now, you said something a couple weeks ago, and I want to really give you credit for this. You said about 3 weeks ago that in your mind, Monroe and Rachel were not that different. They were almost the same type of person.
Right.
And I kind of looked at you at first and go, how? I mean, Monroe's so much more, and then you kind of defended your stance, and I kind of really couldn't argue against it too much because of all the things that Rachel has done. We basically see that admission from Rachel in the flashback here. She is broken over the culpability that she has, over the blood that's on her hands, and this starving child that's the same age as Charlie. You know, she basically admitted as much this week.
Yeah. I don't have anything to add to that. I'll just take your kudos.
I'll give you kudos. I think you called it, and I wasn't really willing to say that. And it is in a different way. You know, Monroe is so deranged and just out of his mind, but they both have a lot of blood on their hands for their actions.
I think she's out of her mind too. I mean, she was willing to commit suicide in order to kill him.
Yeah.
One of the things she talks about how she's changed her mind or kind of regretted that decision, and I loved his analogy with the jumping off the bridge thing. I thought that was great. How they it's a mistake and then splat. But I'm sorry, that was a little cold-hearted. But I want to know, do you think whether or not she actually changed her mind regarding suicide?
Regarding having to take herself out along with Miles? Gosh, really? Hey, I made it farther this week, folks, before I did it. You mean trying to take herself out along with Monroe?
Yeah, or just dying to get rid of her guilt as an entire.
Oh, I see.
Because she kind of.
I think she's torn. I think that she doesn't want to live with the guilt of what she has done, the death that she has caused.
Okay.
But she also, I think she does genuinely love Charlie. Of course she does, and she's already lost Danny. And I think that, as any parent would, if you have a glimmer of hope of reconciliation with your child whom you have wronged, then I think that's something worth living for. So I think on one hand, she feels like she could somehow pay for her wrongs by killing herself and taking out someone else in the process. But at the same time, in that doing that would rob her child of any type of reconciliation, and therefore create another wrong. And I love this. It's such a complex storyline, and you can see how someone would struggle with that. So I think it's legit, man. What do you think?
I'm not ready to say it's legit, but then again, I'm still having a hard time trusting Rachel. I mean, as a whole.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So I can't trust anything that she says. She's here. She wants to turn the power on, regardless of whether or not there's a 1 in 1 billion chance of destroying the world. I mean, she's still motivated by her own desires. So I don't think that she's necessarily changed, but maybe she has. We'll see.
But you would admit that she still desires good things for Charlie. She wants to protect Charlie. When she made that deal with Monroe to go out there and save Charlie, I mean, that was legit. It wasn't just to save her own skin, was it?
No, it's to save Charlie, yeah.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean that she won't try and kill Monroe later. Man, I hope she does.
Rachel, you mean?
Well, yes.
Absolutely she would.
Right.
She would kill him at the first chance she gets.
But at the point where she would commit suicide in order
I don't know about that. I
Okay.
think she might be having second thoughts about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. So, gosh, where are we at now? Okay.
The magnetic
The
gun.
magnetic gun. You're the gun guy between the two of us. What was that? Is that real? Is that possible? I mean, is it somewhat based in reality and then fictionalized?
Well, I think the prop, and correct me if I'm wrong, I used Jason on this, and he served. So, but he said
did.
it was a the model for it was like a Mark 19 grenade launcher or something like that.
It looked like a grenade launcher to me.
So yeah, the prop we've seen in several movies. I think I've seen in several actual like videos for weapons, but I've never been lucky enough to fire a grenade launcher. So I couldn't tell you whether or not it's a real weapon or not.
That Mark 19 looks a lot bigger than what we saw.
Right. Okay, well, when I was discussing weapons with him, he did say the Mark 19 was actually a lot bigger and heavier.
Yeah.
So,
but it did look like a grenade launcher to me. It had that cylinder like an old Tommy gun would, but I think it reminded me of some of the grenade launchers. I love Top Shot on the History Channel. I think it's a defunct show now, but I used to love watching that. And you got a great variety of weapons that these men and women would try to use, and it reminded me of a rocket launcher they would use, or an RPG. Is that right?
Okay.
And so I am so ignorant on weapons, guys. I'm showing it right now, but that's what it reminded me of. But obviously, in this case, it was not a rocket launcher or a grenade launcher. Thank you. Corrected myself. It was a. Was it a magnetized coil gun variety of some sort?
The way they were using it, it looked like a kind of a rail gun or something. I did a quick search because what I had in my head before I talked to him was an M32, which I guess is a Milcore MGL. Grenade launcher is the GL.
Okay.
So multiple grenade launchers.
Yes, that looks like it.
It's 40 millimeter 6-shot revolver style grenade launcher.
That's it.
So that's the look they were using. But
Yep.
grenades fragment. We weren't seeing a whole lot of fragmentation. When it would hit a chair standing beside somebody, it wouldn't tear them to pieces. So
yeah, no, it wasn't fragmenting. It was more like a burst or a pulse.
Right. So it felt like a rail gun. It had a charging sound.
It did.
So again, I've never had the
well, they did
the joy
say
of shooting
you
one
know,
of these
look,
things.
They did say that this facility was the crown jewel of the U.S. government. That it was super top secret. It is the undisclosed location for the vice president.
Right.
And you also have kind of the cutting edge technology that's being developed here. So, look, in my mind, you put all of that together, and they come up with some sort of, in this case, kind of a sci-fi style weapon. I have no problem with that. Whatever. There's a little bit of reality there, and then when you salt in a little bit of realistic probability that this could house something that none of us had ever seen before, I'm totally buying this. I was completely okay with it.
Yeah. Well, you know what happens in sci-fis, right? Time travel.
Oh gosh. I walked right into that, didn't I?
Yeah. So, I don't know. It was interesting. I was willing to say, hey, it's cool, and for some reason it's extremely bloody. So,
yeah.
Little violence doesn't bother me, but...
No. And I'll go ahead and say that at this point, look, we've been talking about the tower almost all season. There was that little blink of light that we noticed right away in the opening credits. Even it was in our pre-Revolution podcast that we did before we ever saw an episode. You noticed that, and several people have noticed it since. Now, it looks like I'm going to say that was supposed to be Colorado Springs and not Hawaii like we had predicted, although Hawaii could still possibly be the case. But I'm thinking it was meant to be the tower.
Okay. Yeah.
You think so or no?
No. I don't.
You still with Hawaii?
Yeah, I'm still somewhere in the Pacific. Not necessarily Hawaii, but it was so far away from everything else. There's no way it could have been.
I hear you. I'm just saying it was kind of in the middle, right above, what the O or something like that. And so it might have been Middle America, which Colorado is very much Middle America. So, but either way, this tower has been a big thing that's been out there that we've been talking about, we've been wondering about, it's been mentioned. It's almost a character in and of itself. So now we get to the tower last week. We get inside the tower this week. Mm-hmm. Did it live up to the hype? And I know next week is called the Dark Tower. We're obviously not done there yet. We'll learn more next week. But here we are with what we know. Did it live up to the hype?
It hasn't lived up to it yet, but that's not saying that it cannot. The hype that I had, and I think a lot of us had, was nanobots having developed AI, and I don't know. I was kind of getting into a really hardcore sci-fi there. What we have is apparently the guy on the elevator just got railgunned, and that's about it. So I don't know. I think at first we thought it was a collider,
right?
So it does have, it's living up to some of the hype, but until we see level 12, what's in our imaginations as what it could do has not been lived up to. No.
Okay. I will say that it is living up to the hype. When they get there and it is an onslaught like something we have never seen before. Mm-hmm. I mean, these people are like fish caught in a barrel, although Mythbusters did kind of debunk that, but we got a nice little Mythbusters shout out this week, though. Yeah. Speaking of the coil gun. Mm-hmm. But for me, it was, yes. I mean, you had those observation monitors that could look and see all over the world. We got confirmation of the status of the rest of the world. We got confirmation that satellites were not affected. And we got an enemy more powerful than anything we've seen before in this show. And so when we talk about the blood and gore that we got in this episode being more than we've ever gotten before, I felt like that was a good use of it to kind of help us understand this is a big deal. This is something that we have not encountered before. It is, like we've been hyping up, it is what we said that it was. And I think that you're right. We've just kind of scratched the surface, and we'll get more next week. Right. But because of that, I felt like it totally lived up to the hype for me.
Okay. That works for me. We did see dead monkeys. So there were no mutants or anything, but they were experimenting, apparently.
Yes, at some point. They weren't flying monkeys, so that doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to be able to click our heels together and go home at some point, although you would like that.
Yeah, you know me.
Yeah. But yeah, no mutants. I did talk about my prediction last week was that the people viewing the monitors were some sort of mutants. I was really hoping we'd get some adamantium at some point. Didn't happen. I liked your prediction last week that they were off-site. They were off-site. Obviously, that turned out not to be the case, but I still thought it was a good theory.
Well, I still think there's something at the light, like we just mentioned. I don't think it was the tower. I think it was something else. So
yeah,
it was out in the ocean somewhere. But I don't know. Maybe one day we'll find people on an island with a smoke monster.
That's right. This is all a setup to bring in the new series of Lost, like Lost. Who's on the island now? That's where Jeremy is. Jeremy got killed. He's now Jacob
Okay.
on the out. It's just kind of sending them all there one at a time.
Right. This is their real story.
That's right. So we're in the tower. Next week is called the Dark Tower. What does that mean? Is that kind of a play on words? I know it's the Stephen King tie-in, but is it a play on words because the power's out? There's darkness across the land. Is it a clue that it's going to bring more darkness? Am I reading too much in this? Is it just...
I don't know. I think it's definitely multiple directions. I think,
Yeah.
I mean, the first and most obvious is the power goes out in the tower.
Yeah.
At least it's the first and most obvious to me. But I think the fact that darkness in a symbolic term is definitely something we're going to see. I think we're going to see a lot of things kind of get really...
So you just said that you think the tower will lose power next week.
Yeah, at some point. Not necessarily the whole episode, but like Randall might shut the power off in order to regain control, something like that.
Okay.
I can see happening.
That's an interesting thing. Some sort of to reboot the securities to where he's in control of them again or something.
Right.
Okay. That's cool. What's on level 12? What is level 12? What's so bad or ominous about level 12? Ominous is not the right word. I mean, it is ominous, but what's actually there?
Well, I mean, something that you can control with the top level. So if you can use the computers to control the satellites, why do you need level 12? I have no idea what's a level 12.
But I think what we've seen so far are some sort of labs, observation decks, security. We saw armories and things like that. Level 12 is the control center.
Okay.
So you can't actually do anything without it. It's too powerful. There's nothing. I don't think there's any entity down there that is powerful. It's the equipment, the buttons, the technology that is there that could be at your fingertips are what is too powerful, and therefore the tower people are preventing anyone. So that's what I think it is. It's really the control center for the tower.
Okay, that totally makes sense to me. So
okay.
Sorry, I'm clicking through old episodes looking for the picture of the dot on the oceans.
Oh, I see. Yeah, it'd be episode 1.
It wasn't there.
It wasn't there?
No.
Huh, that's weird.
Travel back in time there, so.
Yeah. So, for me, I gave it a 9.5. This episode did so many things right. There was lots of action, and it wasn't swordplay action, and I don't mind the swordplay action, but it was kind of nice to get some action in a different way this time.
Certainly.
Randall did weasel his way out of a battle again, but for whatever reason, that didn't bother me this time. All the key players made it out alive. Randall, Rachel, and Monroe, the only 3 we cared about in that pack, all made it out alive, which would normally bug me. I don't have a good reason for why it didn't. Maybe it was just because it was such a cool scene, such a adrenaline pumping, heart racing type of scene that, you knew that none of them were really going to die anyway at this point. I didn't feel like they would anyway.
Yeah.
So I was okay with that. We got some really cool backstory on Rachel. We talked about her feeling the guilt of all the blood that was on her hands. We got some really cool information about her relationship with Ben, and we got what we felt like it was confirmation as to why she didn't really mourn him the way we thought.
Right.
But we also got a little bit of interesting backstory on Tom. Just a little bit of a nugget that we didn't really talk about yet.
Okay.
And that was what Tom said. He said when Monroe found him, he and his family were starving, and that he would not be the man that he is today without Monroe.
Right.
We had kind of been working on the assumption that after Tom killed his neighbor, that he was suddenly someone to be reckoned with, like a switch had been flipped in his head, and now he was all Rambo. But apparently not the case. He was a weakling and unable to provide for his family.
Yeah, and it took him time to actually learn to become the evil man he is. So there's, to me, that actually indicates that there is some hope left for Tom, not like Monroe.
Yeah. So I liked that. I thought we got a little bit of a nugget there. Another thing that I liked about the episode was that when Tom started playing his mind games with that captain, the captain really took the third conversation. He planted the seed in the first conversation. Good luck with those promotions, boys. Then he came back and said, "You want to talk?" and he laid it out before him, and he didn't bite. And then he came back later and said, "Okay, I've got these guys that are on your side, but you're going to have to take out, the major or whoever it was we saw." So they kind of massaged it and worked it throughout the episode. It wasn't one of those, "Hey, I've got this grand idea," and now the guy we've never seen before falls for it. You know what I mean? I liked that it had to develop in stages over the episode. They earned it because they did that.
Yeah.
And then the tension. We've got great tension between Rachel and Bass. Great tension between Bass and Miles.
Yeah.
There's just everything's kind of coming to a head here. We've been building towards this all season, and at the end of the episode, and really throughout the episode, it really is coming together very nicely.
Well, speaking of tension, when Aaron first saw Tom,
yeah,
loved that.
Yes,
that was great.
That was great. This was really hard to choose quotes for quote of the week.
Oh, I can imagine.
I had a hard time, but I did finally narrow it down to 4.
Okay.
So, you ready to get into that? Do you have anything else you want to say about the episode?
No, but I will hypothesize, because somebody in the chat room made me think of it. What if level 12 is the Genesis Project?
That is Star Trek II Wrath of Khan you're going to right there.
And we all know JJ works on Star Trek too. So.
Yeah. That's funny. I did watch that this week. I watched both Star Trek movies, both sequel Star Trek. The Wrath of Khan and Into Darkness. I've seen them both in the last week.
You watched both 2s?
Both 2s.
Okay.
Yes. Yep.
Nice.
All right. Well, I loved it. I thought it set up the finale in a great way. Hopefully the finale lives up to the anticipation and the hype that I have now put upon it, because I love this episode so much.
Well, and I did too. And something I hadn't said yet, I was on the edge of my seat the entire time.
I was too. There was a couple of times we go to commercial and I'm like, I didn't realize how tense I was. Like holding my breath. Yeah, were you the same way?
Yeah. Even though I had friends over and I wasn't, I guess, super, I don't know, as intense as I normally would be, because I didn't really want to look like a dork in front of them.
Yeah.
I was inside. I was like, dang, this is an exciting episode. So I loved this episode. The only reason I didn't give it a 10 is because there's always room for improvement. But next week, if Monroe dies and the rest of the show sucks, you're going to go to
10. Well, I definitely won't say that. We'll have to wait and see how next week plays out. All right. Let's do quote of the week. That thing goes on forever. I need to do something different with that, I guess. Anyway, we had, like I said, I did finally narrow it down to 4 quotes for this week. We'll get to those in just a second. Let's play the winner from last week's episode, which was called Clue. Mm-hmm. And this one, the winner was Put On a Dress.
Rescuing Rachel, it's Hail Mary. Chances of us finding her before Monroe does, or us even getting out of there in one piece. Look, you got somebody to go home to, so go home to your wife.
You son of a bitch, you got some nerve saying that to me.
She will not take me back because you dragged me into this. So you better put on a dress, because you're all I have left.
Ladies.
Good. What are you doing here?
Foster's orders. She wants a representative on the stupid-ass mission of yours. I ride shotgun.
All right. So I'm going to take a break from Quote of the Week here for just a second. The chat room is requesting, Jeremy, that we put a peach bet on Monroe getting killed next week. Are you willing to put peaches on Monroe getting killed or not getting killed?
Well, my reputation is already on it, so...
So then what's a couple of peaches?
I might be allergic to peaches.
Well, what do bananas like Clint and I do?
I don't like bananas. How about apples?
Apples?
Or kiwis.
Kiwis?
Yes, I love kiwis.
Do you really?
I'll eat those just for the heck of it.
All right, 3 kiwis?
3 kiwis.
3 kiwis. Right. If Monroe does not die next week, you will eat 3 kiwis.
I will.
If he does die, I will eat 3 kiwis.
Okay.
All right, there it is, folks. Kiwi bet. You know it's kiwis from here on out. We can't change it. With me. Clint and I will do bananas. You and I will do kiwis.
All right.
All right, let's get back to the quote of the week. with the quotes for this week. The first one is, "Can you stop Rachel?" And I'll just say, in case children are listening, you know the language that we had in this episode. This is going to contain a little bit of that language.
How's it going back home?
Well, if you can't turn the power on, that's the end of Georgia and the rebels.
Oh, good. So, no pressure.
Yeah, can we do this later? Tell him what you told me.
Rachel's in the tower with Monroe.
How did that happen?
She went down to kill him, to blow herself up.
And you just let her.
Can you stop Rachel from doing anything? Because I can't.
That's fascinating, Chubbs. Now, can you get us inside that door or not?
With this book, I can, you dick.
It's hilarious. I loved Aaron in this episode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was great.
Yeah. All right, quote number 2. "I have a son."
I have a son.
What?
I don't know where he is. I've been looking for him. But it makes you wonder if he saw me. If he knew all the things that I've done. What would he think of me? You're right, Rachel. I'm sorry. No more excuses. I know exactly how much blood is on my hands, Rachel.
All right.
Those would have made great last words.
She tried to get him with the scissors or whatever it was that kind of came out of nowhere. Yeah. Yeah,
she just tried to.
That's true. That would have been a good maneuver. All right.
Or shoot him in the back with a coil gun.
Well, they were locked up at that point.
When you unlock them, you shoot
She
him.
couldn't have unlocked the case and gotten the advantage on him without him being able to overtake her.
They both had coil guns when they came out.
I see. Okay. Yeah, she could have shot him in the back or something.
Heck, she was behind him.
Right.
I'm just saying. Kill him.
All right. Quote number 3. "My name is Aaron Pittman."
Grace? Grace Beaumont? My name is Aaron Pittman, and I've been looking for you for a very long time.
I know who you are, Aaron. You're a big deal around here.
That weight, that quote carries some weight with it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You're a big deal around here. They know who he is.
Right.
They know that the stuff that's going on there is based on something he created and didn't know.
Why was he looking for... I mean, was his reference, "I've been looking for you a long time," referring to the beginning of the season?
I think so. When Ben sent him out on that trek to find...
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I was just kind of confused as to... I don't know. When he said, "I have been looking for you for a long time," I was like, Rachel's there with you. Why isn't it we? So I kind of wanted to know if it was actually from his first quest.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly what it was.
Okay.
It was so great to have Maria Howell back, wasn't it? Grace is such a fun character. Fun's kind of an odd word, but she just has this charisma about her, and she's interesting to me. I love it. I love it when she's on the screen. And the final quote is, "Enjoy those promotions."
Where's Captain Baker? Shouldn't he be running point? Unless Monroe blew his face off. Or is that just a rumor?
Answer the question. How do we get inside?
Monroe's been doing that a lot lately. Murdering his best and his brightest. Hell, I was a victim of that same psychotic behavior.
Right. Yeah. Such a victim. How many of my men did you just kill?
They used to be my men, too.
Excuse me, sir. They're asking for you at the infirmary.
Enjoy those promotions, boys.
Long quote, but I liked it. Tom has such a way with him. That smirk that he gives, I thought was a good one. So those are the quotes. As always, they will be up on the website over at goldenspiralmedia.com. And that'll be up on a Wednesday. So click on the Revolution Podcast tab and look for the polls tab after that. You'll find your way to the quote of the week, and you can get your vote on. Vote for your favorite quote for this week's episode.
All right.
Okay. Let's make the announcement about next week, because we forgot to do that during the news segment. Did you add that to the notes like I asked you to?
Yes, but you deleted them like I told you not to do.
What?
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 Anyway, next week's podcast, next week is the finale, so we don't have an episode of Revolution for quite some time. So there's not quite the rush to get the episode out from our end. Normally, we're trying to get our episode recorded so we can get first impressions, and then we got to get really 2 episodes out before the next episode of Revolution airs. So that's kind of why we do the schedule that we do. But next week we don't have another episode staring us down, 6 days later. So we are going to record our review and feedback podcast on Thursday, what would be the date on that? June. Let me pull up the calendar here. That'll be June the 6th. So look for us on June the 6th. If you want to join us for the live show, you can come over to goldenspiralmedia.com. Click on the live show link there at the top of the page. We'll do our live show Thursday, June 6th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And the primary reason for doing this is so that you will have a couple of extra days to prepare your feedback for our feedback episode. We record our review podcast and our feedback podcast back to back, typically on Tuesdays, but next week on Thursday. And then we'll release those. One will go out Thursday night, the next one will go out Sunday night. Really like we did last week because of the weather delay that we had.
Right.
Same thing we did last week. Okay, so that'll give you guys a couple of extra days to submit feedback. And that is per request of some of the listeners we had in the chat room last night. So there you go. And that's the other thing, too. I haven't mentioned it in a while, but we do the chat. The chat room is open every Monday night while we're watching Revolution. So if you want to come chat while we're watching the finale next week, come join us over at goldenspiralmedia.com. And again, click on the live show page. The chat room and the video are all on the same page. The video is only going when we're doing the podcast, but the chat room is always there. You can come in and watch the show and chat. And it's a good time. It's a whole lot of fun. So we hope you'll join us for that. We hope you'll join us on Twitter at GSM Podcasts and on Facebook at facebook.com/goldenspiralmedia. If you want to send in feedback for next week's show, the phone number is 304-837-2278. It'll record the voicemail for you. You can also record your own voicemail or type up an email and email that over to feedback@goldenspiralmedia.com. And the other option is to go over to our website, again, goldenspiralmedia.com. Click on the Send Voicemail tab that's kind of hanging out there on the right-hand side of the page. It'll use the microphone built into your computer to record a feedback and then email it over to us. So those are the ways that you can send in your feedback for next week's Season 1 finale.
All right.
Did I cover everything?
I think you did.
Did I? All right.
I think you got it all.
Well, thank you guys for joining us for this week's episode of the Revolution Podcast. And until next time, I want to remind you that... Did you move it?
Nope.
Did I put it in the wrong one?
I believe you did.
No.
Nope.
Did you take it out?
No, I did not.
Where did it go? I had it in there.
He will remind you, where did it go?
Where did it go? What did I
didn't see you put it in there.
Gosh, what was it?
Well,
maybe...
until next time, the way is shut.
I don't know the exact line from Star Wars. The odds of survival are... I should look that up. That'll be my sign-off. We'll do that.
You're just going to cheat and re-edit it.
Yeah, well, I won't in the video. I'm going to look like an idiot on the video.
Yeah.
That's going to take too long for me to look up. Gosh, I thought I know what I did. I did my episode rating. That's what I typed in. I did not do my sign-off.
All right.
All right,
guys.
All right, I've got one. It's stupid, but I'll do it. All right. So until next time, power on.
Nice.
Yeah, well. The Revolution Podcast and Golden Spiral Media are not associated with Bad Robot Productions, Kripke Enterprises, Warner Brothers, or NBC. Golden Spiral Media's use of any and all copyrighted material is only for parody, news analysis, critique, or educational purposes as provided within United States Code Title 17, aka Fair Use. For advertising opportunities, live show, and other Golden Spiral Media podcast productions, visit goldenspiralmedia.com. Copyright 2013, Golden Spiral Media.